Good morning and welcome to today's EIA webinar on the hydrocarbon gas liquids, alkanes, olefins split in our supply and disposition tables. My name is Warren Gilchevsky. With me in the room is Mindy Farber-Dianda, the head of the Biofuels and Emerging Technologies team. I also have with me Rob Miriam, who runs the Office of Energy Statistics, Petroleum and Biofuels Statistics team, along with a number of colleagues from across EIA who are available when we move to the Q&A session. So just to begin, this is EIA's Safe Harbor Statement. Hopefully all of you are familiar with EIA. We are an independent Energy Statistics and Analysis Office under the Department of Energy. So what are we going to cover today? I guess for those of you who are on the line, you have probably already discovered on the 31st of August that our supply and disposition tables, as these cover hydrocarbon gas liquids, have changed. And the change effective with the June 2017 Petroleum Supply Monthly, along with the Petroleum Supply Annual Release on the 31st of August, we have revised hydrocarbon gas liquids data back to January 2010 to reflect this alkanes olefins split. Just to emphasize, our surveys remain the same. The underlying data is the same. For the most part, the only things that have changed are the labels and the table layouts. The difference that you may discover is primarily in the stocks, and this is based on how industry stakeholders have provided insight that has been applied to those stocks and in general to the tables to make this data more accessible to our users and more reflective of the way that in general people are looking at this hydrocarbon gas liquids data. So in particular, things like ethane supply or propane versus propylene. So hopefully what you will discover is that the tables, as they are now, are more closely aligned with the way that you have been looking at this data all along. The only thing that will disappear, it is no longer in our totals, is ethylene stocks, ethylene trade. The only thing that we will continue to cover at EIA is ethylene production from refineries. And this is solely to allow for a proper accounting of refinery inputs-outputs balance. All other aspects of the ethylene market will no longer be covered. You could say EIA is out of the ethylene business. So this is a flow chart that many of you may find familiar. We have been showing this for well over 4 years. When we embarked on this project to split up alkanes and olefins in our data, what we called at the time was hydrocarbon gas liquids or HGL implementation. Well, this has occurred. We are now where we aimed to be, which is having on the left-hand side natural gas liquids, the alkanes, and on the right-hand side, the refinery olefins. So how does that affect each of the product categories that we have previously covered? Starting from the left, liquefied petroleum gases was probably the most problematic of all these categories because it was essentially a hodgepodge of all alkanes and olefins aside from natural gasoline or pentanes plus, right? So from now on, liquefied petroleum gases, LPG, will reflect the totals that are generally understood by the market to be LPG, which is propane, normal butane, isobutane. Olefins go their separate ways. Natural gasoline or pentanes plus is now natural gasoline. Ethane is ethane. So moving right, as I had mentioned, pentanes plus becomes natural gasoline. It's the same data. There is no moving around, no splitting up, because pentanes plus are natural gasoline. If you were looking at things like price series or any kind of analysis out there in the market, this has always been natural gasoline, and if you ever saw Pentanes Plus, it was usually in reference to EIA data. Well, we are now kind of getting with the program, it's natural gasoline and EIA data now as well. Ethane, ethylene, as I had mentioned before, ethylene will no longer be reported aside from refinery net production. Everything else is going to be ethane only. So again, there's that split, ethane and the alkanes, ethylene and the olefins, and all our supply and demand, or supply and disposition tables will reflect essentially just the ethane numbers. And then going further right, propane, propylene, we have separate series for propane, separate series for propylene, and the same applies for normal butane, butylene, and isobutane, isobutylene. So where did we start? Where did this all begin? This is a table that many of you have been looking at, perhaps with some consternation for many, many years. The last time you had the opportunity to look at this table was on August 31st of this year, because on the 31st, we moved to a different way of splitting out these products. So what you had, for example, was a Pentanes Plus number, which is now going to be natural gasoline. You had this liquefied petroleum gases, which included essentially everything aside from Pentanes Plus, and then you had all these mixed categories. All of that is going away. We're splitting it all up. So where we are now is here. We have a much cleaner table that shows very clearly, for example, that when it comes to natural gas liquids, you have field production, which is gas plants, and you have refinery production. When it comes to the olefins, the refinery olefins, as they're labeled in this table as the header, that's coming just from refineries. We are not tracking the petrochemical industry. We're just collecting data from refineries. This is very important because a lot of people do ask that question. So this is refinery data only. And again, as I have circled in the two columns for ethylene, we are only reporting refinery net production, no longer stocks, therefore no longer stock changes. So this has probably been the table on the left that has caused the most consternation for people who are using EIA data. This overarching liquefied petroleum gases category. So when you were looking at exports by destination, and a lot of people have been looking at that recently, all you were getting is this sum, which included everything from ethane to normal and isobutane, including propane. So that's gone. It's all history now. On the right-hand side, you have all these products now neatly split out. So you have ethane, propane, normal butane, isobutane, natural gasoline. And for each one of these products, there's a separate table with exports by destination. And this was actually in EIA's underlying data all along. Unfortunately, it took this long to actually develop a vehicle, this new split and this table design that has allowed us to be able to display this information out in separate form. So as I had mentioned at the very beginning, this is not a change to our underlying data. And in fact, this data has, for the most part, been there all along. So natural gas plant field production. Natural gas plants only produce alkanes. They only produce propane, not propylene. They only produce normal butane, not butylene, and so forth. So when we were showing these numbers in EIA data previously, and in some places like in the Excel downloaded tables or in the specific product pages, you would be seeing propane, propylene, ethane, ethylene. And this was a very kind of light lift. We have relabeled everything. The data is exactly the same as it was before. The only change in this table is that now this liquefied petroleum gases sum at the bottom includes just what's in the box: propane, normal butane, isobutane. Moving on to refinery net production, we actually have always collected this on our surveys. We have always collected separately ethane, ethylene, propane, propylene. Since 2005, our surveys have brought that data in, and we have been showing it in tables before, although it was maybe a little bit more difficult to kind of get at. Well, now we have split up these things a little bit cleaner, right? And as you can see in the table, everything is in its separate lines. There are separate totals for the natural gas liquids and separate totals for refinery olefins. And for those of you who want to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, we have retained at the very bottom those old categories that have the ethane, ethylene together, the propane, propylene together. We will continue to publish that series for a while. We have heard from a number of our stakeholders that retiring these numbers too soon may cause some consternation for those who are still working on relining their tables and pulling the data in the new way. So we're going to publish this for a while, and believe me, you're going to have plenty of opportunity to download this, and we will let you know when these series will be retired. And even when they are, the data will still be there. We will just stop tabulating it. But all the historicals will still be available, because this was another question that we received since this new table design has been rolled out. So going to refinery and blender net inputs, again, pretty much exactly the same thing. The data has always been there. It's just displayed differently, but it's still the same. Movement by pipeline, we have actually discovered in our conversations with stakeholders, through industry publications, through various company releases, and by reviewing FERC tariff documents, that in fact, no pipelines that cross pad boundaries carry olefins. As a result, it is very easy. All you have is the same numbers at the top as on the bottom. They're just labeled differently, right? So the ethane ethylene number is still the same. It's just now ethane, because in fact, there is no ethylene in those pipes, not in the pipes that cross pad boundaries, and as a result, not in the totals for pads-to-pad movements. For rail, because we embarked on the rail project and working on HGL by rail data, after we already knew that this time when we're going to split the alkanes and olefins will come, we, from the very beginning, were looking at rail data in a way that had allowed us to split the alkanes and the olefins. So for those of you who had logged in to our HGL by rail webinar in February, this will look familiar to you. This is a table that splits out propane, propylene, normal butane, isobutane, and as I had mentioned back in February, we had chosen not to cover the butylenes simply because there is insufficient data in the rail data that we get from the Surface Transportation Board to allow us to split that out. So because we're not confident in the quality of the data, we had chosen just not to report it to begin with. Now when it comes to stocks, there is a little bit more work involved here, but again, not at the natural gas plant level, because natural gas plants do not produce olefins. And as a result, it had been simply a relabeling exercise, and again, as had been shown before, whatever is in that box is the same as it's above, right? Ethane, ethylene is ethane. Propane, propylene is propane, because that's what you get out of natural gas processing plants. You get alkanes only. When it came to pipelines, it was a little bit more challenging, because even though pipelines that cross pad boundaries do not carry olefins, EIA surveys stocks at pipelines that are just within pads. So the pipelines that move, let's say, ethylene or propylene within the Gulf Coast region, pad 3, will report stocks to us, right? What we have discovered, however, is that these are smaller diameter pipelines, especially the ones that report to us, do not constitute a majority of the market to begin with. In fact, they're a minor component of that total, let's say, ethane, ethylene number. And on top of that, because these are dedicated pipelines for the most part, the line fill, which is essentially the pipeline stock, remains more or less uniform throughout the year, right? The pipeline doesn't change diameter, it doesn't change its length, and as a result, whatever is the line fill, the line pack in that pipeline will also hardly vary from month to month. So there may still be some olefins data in that total, which is now, let's say, ethane. However, it is a very minor component, and it is essentially non-variable, and as a result, when we calculate things like stock changes, which are necessary for the supply disposition balances, that will not affect the product supply calculation. Bulk terminals, again, many of the analysts who are probably on this call right now have become savvy to the fact that because we have been reporting, for example, propylene non-fuel use as a separate number from the propane-propylene total, then all that was really required was to subtract the propylene from that total to arrive at the propane number at bulk terminals. And that's essentially what we have done here. So the propane-propylene total is still the same. It is now split between propane and propylene, and you get those two separate data series for bulk terminal stocks. You will notice, again, as I have previously mentioned, that for ethane, ethylene, we are now reporting ethane stocks only. So even in that total line down at the bottom, that is an ethane-only number. There's no ethylene in that number anymore. So we're just reporting the ethane, not the ethylene. That ethylene number will be 0 henceforth. So where was most of the heavy lift? It was in the refinery stocks, right? And that's because our surveys do not collect refinery stocks in alkanes and olefins as standalones. The lines on our surveys remain this mix of propane, propylene, ethane, ethylene. And as a result, here we actually benefited from a lot of the conversations we've had with industry stakeholders when we were doing our HGL by rail. And what we had learned is that refinery stocks have a high turnover. They are generally rotated through on a regular basis. And as a result, refinery stocks will generally reflect refinery throughput. So what we have done here is we have applied the refinery net production number, and we have used the ratio that we calculate for, let's say, ethane, ethylene, which we already capture at a refinery, and split that ethane, ethylene total stock number into its components based on refinery throughput in any given month. And of course, refinery throughput changes in any given month. Refinery stocks will therefore also change. But again, because these stocks rotate through on a regular basis, we expect that in general, this will affect our stocks to a very minor degree. And in any case, we still have that total number down at the bottom. So for those of you who are interested in how Humpty Dumpty used to look like, you can still put it back together again by just adding these numbers up. Or until we retire the series, just look at the total ethane, ethylene, propane, propylene number, and you're still going to get that total number that we capture in our surveys. And again, I need to emphasize the underlying data in our surveys does not change, right? Refiners will continue to supply us with this propane, propylene stocks number. We will, on the back end, process that data at the refinery level and split it up into its components and report it as such in these tables. So after regaling you with screenshot after screenshot of all these various tables that have changed, where does it get us? It gets us to someplace that I have been wanting to go with EIA data since I started working on propane many, many years ago, which is a product supply number that actually lines up well with demand, with heating degree days for propane, right? So what you see on the left-hand side is pad 1. That's the blue region down in the map in the center. Pad 2, the Midwest, is the green region, again, on the map in between the two charts. And what you see there is that now what we have is we have propane product supplied, which is generally accepted as a proxy for consumption, although of course doesn't fully line up, right? Because product supplied will reflect when, let's say, retailers stock up before the winter heating season, or when consumers start filling their tanks in anticipation of heating demand. So there is going to always be some time lag. But what you can see now is, because we now have rail data that allows us to obtain better pad-to-pad balances, and because now we have this propane-only data series, we get a really neat correlation between product supplied for propane in, let's say, pad 1, and heating degree days, which you could say are a proxy for current consumption for the residential and commercial sectors that use propane for heating. And for pad 1 and for pad 2, where most of the propane is consumed for heating, these numbers line up very, very neatly. And this is not by design. This is really a goal that we have been trying to attain by fixing our numbers at the foundation. And I think what you will discover is that now they much better reflect where the market is and where the market is going when it comes to things like heating degree days and so forth. So with that, I'll move to the Q&A. Thank you very much. And because this is being recorded and the Q&A will not be recorded, you will find that all the question and answers will be in slides preceding thank you and after this, these charts. And for any further questions, please feel free to contact me, Warren Lichevsky, at the email address shown, or Sasha Abdallah, again, at the email address provided. Thank you very much.